If you've ever wanted to simply see two people fight, you could go to your local bar and get two people loaded and watch drunkards go at it. But combat sports have to throw in the drama and over-the-top trash talk to get people interested. These 10 guys do it the best. Here are the 10 best trash talkers in MMA history. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and join our notification camp to never miss a video. TITO ORTIZ. It's a perfectly logical thing to say that TITO ORTIZ shone brightest in an era where the UFC didn't necessarily have a ton of people on the roster who knew how to market themselves properly. Having said that, ORTIZ was definitely one of the first MMA fighters who understood that prize fighting is more than just physical technique. You always have to make people either want to see you kick ass or get your ass kicked, and Tito definitely made some people want to see him get his ass kicked. His earliest feud involved him and Ken Shamrock. Now those who know Shamrock from his WWE days where he would lay waste to referees left, right, and center know he's going to be a bit of a hothead. ORTIZ knew just how to stoke those fires time after time and got the best of him in these 3 fights, winning all by TKO. QUINTON Jackson. One of the most dangerous but at the same time goofiest people in the sport, QUINTON Rampage Jackson buttered his bread in the wacky world of Pride FC. In this world where behind-the-scenes skits and over-the-top was the norm, Jackson flourished and learned how to be a fighter worth noticing. Jackson in a lot of ways is just a little teenager wrapped in the body of a giant killer. He's crude, he's brash, and doesn't always know what he's doing is wrong, but most people like him anyway because he's charming. Watch his interviews with Ariel Helwani and you'll applaud how the reporter was able to keep his composure while Rampage was doing his thing. In terms of feuds with fighters, Rampage would alternate between playing the clown and trying to be a savage beast. He could play both parts extremely well, especially in his feuds with Wanderlei Silva and Chuck Liddell. Jackson's skills and dedication are a fraction of what they once were, but Jackson remains one of the sport's most iconic characters. It'd be a real shame if he never goes into the UFC Hall of Fame. Nate Diaz. Whoever said that trash talkers had to be the most eloquent speakers? Nate Diaz may have a funny voice and his vocabulary may not extend past a high school level, but that hasn't stopped him from talking mad amounts of trash. Ever since the start of his UFC career, Nate Diaz adopted not only the fighting style of his elder brother Nick, but his tongue-lashing talent as well. Unlike a lot of fighters on this list, Diaz will not only spit fire outside of the cage, but also inside of it. Who could forget when he had Kurt Pellegrino in a triangle choke at UFC Fight Night 13 and flipped him off? Or how about when after defeating Conor McGregor at UFC 196 on less than 2 weeks' notice, he uttered the legendary, "I'm not surprised, motherfucker." Diaz's list of moments are so numerous that we couldn't list them all here, but trust us when we say that Diaz is a bad man. Before you rush to the comments section and cry foul for not including Nick Diaz on this list, consider this spot shared by both of them. Their style is essentially the same, but Nate's career is superior to Nick's in our opinion. Ronda Rousey. Ronda Rousey may not have a leg to stand on anymore. Wait, we're sorry, that's assuming that she could stand up because if you know MMA, you know that Rousey and stand up don't belong in the same sentence. Sorry for the little diversion, but back to complimenting Ronda Rousey. When she was on top of her game, Rousey could do no wrong. The amount of self-confidence that Rousey had in herself allowed her to say what she wanted and no woman could say anything to the contrary. She coined the term "do nothing bitch" and launched it into the smack-talking lexicon. Not many other fighters can claim that. But that term is saved for non-fighters. When it came to her opponents, Rousey was just as ruthless. She offered no apologies for breaking Nisha Tate's arm and called her opponents out on any weakness they showed. If that wasn't enough, she took their arms as trophies when she wasn't crushing them with punches. Women's MMA may have passed her by, but never forget when Rousey was queen of the MMA world. Brock Lesnar. Never the most technical fighter, Brock Lesnar was and is a terrifying freak of nature who snacks on bone marrow, probably. Never the greatest talker in his original WWE run, Lesnar seems more comfortable talking trash in the context of MMA. It could have been the more competitive atmosphere of MMA that triggered a chemical reaction in Lesnar's brain to talk more trash. Face it, Lesnar is a big crude dude with attitude and when you give him a target, he unleashes. This can really be seen in his feud with Frank Mir, which resulted in the UFC's biggest pay-per-view buy rate ever at UFC 100. Mir won the first contest between the two via knee bar, but instead of shutting Lesnar down, that just fueled his rage further. The amount of anger and hate with which Lesnar spoke of Mir felt genuine like few other feuds. Then came the climax at his post-fight victory where he crapped on UFC sponsor Bud Light, claimed to beat Mir over the head with a horseshoe and said he would get on top of his wife later that night. It remains the best post-fight interview in UFC history, or at the very least, the most raw. That's a pun, you see, because he appears on Monday Night Raw, and then I said Raw. Alright, moving on. Quick question for you. We're talking about good trash talkers here, but which former UFC fighter tried and failed to turn this line into a catchphrase? Don't fear me, fear the consequences. Michael Bisping. Few other people in MMA have gotten more people excited to see them get their ass kicked than Michael Bisping. This silver-tongued Englishman is never at a loss for words and coaxes emotional outbursts from even Dan Henderson, whose usual dry sarcasm is never breached. In nearly every major fight of Bisping's career, he has managed to get under the skin of his opponents in some way or another. Luke Rockhold, Jason Miller, and Alec Belcher all crumbled under the fury of Bisping's words. Belcher probably deserved it worst of all, though. What is wrong with his brain that he got that ugly Johnny Cash tattoo? What you have to admire about the Count is that even with all the beatings and lumps he's taken, he's never gotten kicked off the trash-talking horse. Even when beaten, that Manchester voice will claw into your head and stay with you forever. There's a reason why Bisping is a part of Fox Sports' UFC broadcast so often. It's because he's entertaining in whatever role you put him in. Our favorite Bisping line, though, has to be versus Luke Rockhold, where he said, "He's the least charismatic semblance of flesh that I ever had the misfortune of being associated with." Damn. John Jones. There has always been a tale of two John Joneses. The first one is the boring, bland, good guy that he played earlier on in his career. This John Jones was always going on about God and how he was a good guy, blah blah blah. The other John Jones is the one who doesn't give a damn, knows how good he is, and talks all he wants. We got a brief glimpse at this John Jones throughout his championship run, but it has all exploded in his feud with Daniel Cormier. The rivalry was probably the most personal in UFC history. Both men went after each other on matters that went beyond fighting ability, and we gotta say, we give the edge to Jones. Not that Cormier was a slouch, but Jones's one-liners and capacity for trolling throughout the 3-year rivalry is astounding. Every time Jones was on the ropes from a Cormier barb, he had a counter that would trigger Cormier and set him off. The fact that Jones got the better of this trash-talking despite Cormier having so much material to work with says loads about Jones's trash-talking ability. Rashad Evans. Former teammate of John Jones, Rashad Evans was one of the biggest names in UFC during the late 2000s. How did Evans make that name? Okay, yes, he did it by winning the light heavyweight championship, but more importantly to why he became such a villain was who he beat. Let's take a look at some of Evans' greatest victories: Chuck Liddell, Forrest Griffin, and Quinton Jackson. What do these guys all have in common? They were all fan favorites, and instead of being humble in victory, Evans would instead boast about his greatness. Evans was also one of the original guys to taunt and smack-talk his opponents in the middle of a fight. Who can forget that time where he blew a kiss to Griffin and then tapped his crotch? Or on The Ultimate Fighter Season 2 where he started showboating in the middle of a match. He may have lost a step in recent years, but Evans used to be one of the top stars and trash talkers in the sport. Chael Sonnen. For the first half of his career, Chael Sonnen was a colorless face inside of MMA, known for strong wrestling but poor submission defense. Then around 2009, something changed with Sonnen. He somehow unleashed a trash-talking beast inside of himself that propelled him to center stage and the UFC main event scene. Then he found himself a nemesis, middleweight kingpin Anderson the Spider Silva. Sonnen unleashed a verbal assault never before seen in mixed martial arts on Silva. He insulted his Brazilian heritage, his lackluster and bizarre performances against Thales Lidas and Damian Maia, and even his training partners the Nogueira brothers. There was no way he could back up all his words, but come UFC 117, he gave Silva the fight for his life and nearly beat him. Even if he won, Sonnen failed the drug test post-fight, but did that stop him? Nope. Sonnen even turned that around by saying that they caught his testosterone levels on a low day if he was 1/10 above the average. He might not have always been able to back his grandiose claims, but Chael Sonnen remains the benchmark for crafting clever insults in MMA. That's his true legacy. Conor McGregor. Conor McGregor has the MMA world wrapped around his fingers, and if by some insane miracle defeats Floyd Mayweather, he'll have the realm of boxing as well. He got to this level of fame for two reasons. One is his great fighting ability, but perhaps just as importantly is his incredible way with words. While McGregor might not be as clever or as funny as somebody like Chael Sonnen, he more than makes up for it with his sheer presence. Whenever he's in a room, he's an attention vortex which funnels everybody's energy whether they like it or not. If he senses any amount of weakness in an opponent, he will sniff it out like a dog and pounce on them. What's that? Mayweather can't read? Prepare for atomic bomb levels of savagery. You're a UFC mid-carder talking trash to McGregor, a simple who the F is that guy will sort you out, Jeremy Stevens. Every opponent he's faced, he's managed to get in their heads at least on some level. And with an entire country steadily behind him, good luck taking him down on the microphone. So we've said the best, now here's one of the worst. The man behind the quote, "Don't fear me, fear the consequences," is Paul Benatello. Next time, Paul, say your catchphrase out loud and see if it makes sense. That's it for our list. Who are some of the other names from MMA lore that were good on a stick? Conor McGregor has changed the game and now everybody is trying to smack talk, some succeeding and some failing badly. Be sure to like this video, share it, and subscribe to TheSportster for more awesome content. Thanks for watching.